Go.
Okay. I'm just going to start with some background on King Leopold II, who was the King of Belgium. And he also founded the Congo Free State, or like the Belgian Congo. And it operated as a corporate state, which meant that all of the money that was earned by the Congo was given directly to King Leopold. And so like this often led to harsh and like inhumane treatment of the Congolese people. And so like some of these like harsh treatments included like red rubber and human zoos. So
red rubber?
It's like it's the thing that like, so rubber was one of the main exports of the Congo.
Okay.
And so red rubber represents like the blood shed by Congolese people for like.
Okay, get it.
Okay. So the first human zoo was created in the summer of 1897 by King Leopold, and he imported 267 Congolese people to Brussels, and they were shown in Tervuren, and 1.3 million Belgians viewed the like Congolese people out of the 4 million who lived there.
Okay.
And so they often set them up in a typical village. And this was when like Congolese people would just spend their day like, they just were supposed to live like how they would in the Congo. And so they lived in straw huts, and they were mocked by naked people. And so men and women would stand on like the edge, and they were fenced in, and they were watched essentially, like how you would watch an animal in a zoo. And so if people weren't getting a reaction out of the Congolese people, they often threw like money or bananas at them and like treated them as if they were real animals and like really degraded the Congolese people. And oftentimes like in Brussels or even in Belgium, you could hear people just talking about like seeing the Congolese people at the zoological gardens is what they called them. And due to the difference in like environments and climates in Brussels, many of the prisoners like died of diseases such as influenza and pneumonia. And so when they died, they were buried in an unmarked grave, and they were just like right next to their enclosure, I guess. So then 50 years later, during the World Fair, they created a second human zoo. So in 1958, and it was another African village, and the Congolese were on display, but this time there were 598 people who were kept on display, and so that was 273 men, 128 women, and 197 children, and so it was a total of 183 families. And the Congolese who traveled to Belgium for the exposition thought it would be like a cultural exchange kind of thing, like they didn't realize like what they were kind of going over for. And so then they were often complaining because it was such a cramped area for them to stay in, and there were very
Who was complaining?
the Congolese people.
Okay.
And so they had many like limitations, and like visitors were coming at all hours, and of course like there was daily abuse for them, and like oftentimes like the abuse was horrible for them.
But who was committing the abuses?
Just Belgian people. So like anybody who went to go visit them was often like very rude, and like.
So you mean like they could just roam around where these people were, like it would be like St. Mary's, and then the Congolese people would be there, and then the Belgians could just walk
It'd be
around?
like if the like population of St. Mary's was out on the quad kind of, and then like anybody from Raleigh could just like come in and like watch us.
But
like
from
learn.
the outside?
Yeah.
Or just, okay.
So they like never fully went into the
Okay.
enclosure, I guess is the best word for it. And so many times like Congolese people would get sick because people were throwing candy at them.
Okay.
And so essentially King Leopold, like when he heard about them getting sick, from eating all of the candy or like the bananas or like stuff that was being thrown at them, he essentially put up a sign that said, "Don't feed the animals." So that's not very good. And it said like the blacks are fed by an organizing committee, which like often was not true. They like were eating what they could. So that was like another form of the abuse that they were receiving. Their enclosures like often were like surrounded by a fence, so it was made of bamboo, and it just like made them feel like primates, kind of like they were a lesser form of human. And so oftentimes they were treated as if they were monkeys, so there was a lot going on, and people often like yelled monkey noises at them like to get their attention. And so many of the Congolese people tried to protest that because they wanted to be respected, but their protests weren't heard. And so like they decided to reopen the museum that kind of like held the human zoo, and it's been open for a while, but they closed it 5 years ago so that they could kind of change the way that they were representing the Congolese people, because the way that they represented them hadn't changed since 1920. So
what do you say? 5 years ago?
So like it had been open up until 2014, and then they closed it. Like like the director of the museum closed it because he felt as if the Congolese people were not being represented in the best light. And like,
walk me through this. So in 1959, they still had them. They still had the zoos the way you described them.
Right.
The zoos with the Congolese in there. What happened between 1959 and now? I mean,
So,
2014.
Once the World Fair closed, they went back to the Congo.
The Congolese people went back.
Yes.
Okay.
And so then like King Leopold still kept like their like enclosures there.
Okay.
And so you were still able to like walk around and like see them and like where they lived. But then like in 2014, the new director of the museum thought that like the culture of the Congolese people was not being represented correctly. And it was represented as if like they didn't have a culture, and like they were just like there to be like domesticated, essentially. And so he closed it so that he could share like more of their story and less of Belgium's story.
Okay.
And so like one of his direct quotes is, "We have a responsibility for cultivating an attitude that a lot of Belgians have for being superior to Black people." And kind of the reason that the museum was closed was so that it could change. And he said like he understood that it would take a long time, but like this is the first of many steps that could help improve that mindset.
Okay.
And so then how this affects the world today, in school books, this is like from a Congolese person today. They said that they were taught that the Congolese did not exist without Belgian colonists, and so he like really wanted to learn more about like what it was like before the Belgians like colonized the Congo. And so he said he went to the museum like before it had been redone, and he realized that like all of their culture was stripped from them, and like their history had been confiscated from them. And that he would never want his children to see like his people like that, because they would never see a positive image of themselves. And so oftentimes like when you would walk in, you would see like Africans as like shown as primitives, and they were clinging to the robes of like heroic white Europeans. And then King Leopold was like there in he was like a giant statue, and it was like him like welcoming them. And it was just like it was very sad for him to see all that, because he just knew like the brutality and all the stuff that his people endured during this time period. And so it's just as crazy about that. And then another Congolese woman living in Belgium goes to the graves weekly and leaves flowers for the unmarked graves of the people who died during the World Fairs. And she said that she knows that racism like is tied directly to the colonialism, and like there needs to be a change soon. And so that's kind of like how even in 1897 like it's still impacting our world in 2019.
Okay.
So.
Wow, that's impressive. That's so sad too.
I know.
Oh boy. So if I understood well, so first, my thought was, oh, okay, you mean like they, I thought that they brought these Congolese people, put them there, but they lived all their lives there, like they, I didn't know they were like there for a few days and then they would take them back to Congo?
Yeah, it was kind of just like...
Just for the fair or something like that. Okay, I thought it was a permanent thing, and I thought, okay, these people had to live it's really, really bad. So they just brought them like for like special event or whatever.
Yeah, it was like they were like the main show.
The main show.
It's like when like you go and see like a polar bear, and like that's crazy in Raleigh.
Yeah.
But, like,
yeah, and so like because you said 2014, I mean, it just seems to me that it's what they're doing is not much. I mean, to pretty much, kind of do a mea culpa. This, we did something really bad here. We had to repent, whatever.
Right.
But you know what I mean, because it's really, really bad. I mean, back in the day, but even 1959 seems not long ago.
Yeah, no, that's not that long ago. Like, my grandparents were in college then.
Yeah.
Like, that's like...
Yeah, And it's just like, so I wonder, like, what's the, I know I'm asking you questions, I'm just interested, like, I know there's a lot of talking about, because France was a big colonizing country, and and then, in the news all the time, politics will always hear that France has to go and, like pretty much say sorry to all these countries. And so do you know what the Belgian, the government is doing? Are they doing like trying to...
I'm not positive about that, but I think it's essentially like they're trying to apologize, and then like because the RMCA is like one of their main museums, like I think like them trying to also share the culture is like a really big step for them. But I mean, again, like along the lines of what you were saying, like how much of an impact is that really allowing?
Yeah. It's just like I'm going to talk about random things. But it makes me think like, when you say those are the impacts that they have nowadays, and like from a point of view of a person that is not from that culture, I'm not Congolese, I'm not, whatever, and I feel like, not that I feel like, but I can be put in the shoes of somebody that says, well, you can just get over it.
Right.
And I think sometimes like we do not see that it has more than to get over it.
Right.
It's something that is like ingrained in you as soon as you're born, like it's almost like you carry all this weight that makes you, so it's really hard for you to have a positive view or on who you are, who, and that brings all kinds of different things. So that reminds me of all the, of course, African Americans in this country too, with slavery and all of that, and I think that, I don't know, I just feel like that it's more than just saying sorry, but like I know that some people say they should compensate us, financially, but I just wonder what could be done so that I mean, there's more than just the impact of all of that, but there's also the impact it has also on white people or Western people, where they feel they're superior, just because they also grew up in a kind of state of mind where if you're white, you're better. It's just a given, without saying it, So, I never really, I knew all of that, but seeing those human zoos is just like, it seems so cruel that people did that. But then sometimes I think, are we doing this somehow in a certain way to certain things that we're not even aware of?
Right.
15 years down the road, they're gonna say these people were so cruel. How couldn't they see that?
Yeah, and I feel like in a way, like, I mean, it's definitely not the same. But if you think about like even like Donald Trump like building a wall like between like Mexico and America. Like it's definitely not the same as like the human zoo.
Yeah.
But I think it's like still like a 2019 kind of like comparison.
Yeah.
Like it's still very similar.
Yeah, it's similar, like saying, you know, pretty much saying we need to keep ourselves separate from you.
Right.
Because we're better than you.
Right.
Because otherwise you're going to kind of, whatever, contaminate us, whatever that is, you know. It's just, it's just all kinds of things like that, when you think about it, you know, I had something in mind, it went away, but, you know, sometimes I think, what am I doing that in 50 years might seem so crazy to, you know, the next generations, and then they're gonna go, can you believe that in 2020 people did that?
Right.
You know, so it's just like and I know it goes with the this is how it was in the time, and this is how our thinking was, and this is what seemed, what the norms were, and this is what we accepted, and then, you know, we switched. I was actually, I know I'm, you know, maybe you don't have to film that, I don't know. But, you know, I was watching and it's not, you know, you're underage maybe, I don't know.
We can cut this part out if you want.
No, I'm not saying anything about the assassination of Gianni Versace, you know, and, you know, it retraces since I think he was killed in 97, it retraces really the LGBTQ or gay people. Back then we just called them gay people, or whatever, you know, we didn't have differences.
Yeah, there was something.
And I was telling my husband, I was like, you know, when you think about it, the way gay people were treated back then to now, I mean, there's such a shift.
Right.
It's really dramatic shift. I mean, I don't know if you're of age, I don't know how old you have to be to watch this, because there are a few parts of it. But, you know, like, just to look at how it was, especially back then, when AIDS was around and everybody attributed this to gay people doing the wrong thing and they're sinful and all this stuff, to what it is now, that even now, you know, you can't discriminate, people can get married even though there's such a shift.
Right.
So I'm thinking about your generation, if you really looked at how people were treated back then, gay people, and how, no, it's not like we didn't know it was bad. I mean, you know, I was young then, so I had friends that were gay and all that stuff, and we always thought that it was not normal, that it would be treated differently, you know. But, you know, but still, you know, it was more normal to be, because you're gonna, you know, if you watch it, I mean, really, the part of it was like they were saying that since this person killed a lot of gay people, the police didn't really do the work until it happened to Gianni Versace, who was gay, but he was celebrated.
Right.
You know? So, you know, I was like, you know, how much is a person worth?
Right, like, is one person worth more than another?
Yeah.
Where, like, yeah, I definitely think, like, one life does not, like, value more, but I think, like, definitely people will, like, justify, like, I don't know, like, if somebody, like, today, I don't know, like, if, like, Kim Kardashian were murdered, like, I feel like people would really, like, investigate that, but then, like, I feel like maybe if, like, I don't know, someone down the street from us, like, was murdered, like, it definitely wouldn't have the same impact.
You know, somebody that is drug addict or something like that, or, you know, or things that. So I just, it's also very interesting how that might, I mean, a lot of people went, that might have seemed normal, and then with the eyes of our days, you know, we just don't think it's normal. It's like when people, I think they still do it though, when people went and watched people being, you know, guillotine or hung, or, and how we would think now, this is so weird. People did it, they went with kids and everything, so I just wonder, what is it that we do now that is gonna seem so not, you know, humane and human for people to, I don't know, I just so it was, I didn't know all of that. That's why I also wanted to learn more, because I'm like, okay, I kind of knew about a few things, but I didn't really know. And then since it's connected to French, of course, because it's Belgian, I was like, okay, I would be very interested in knowing. And it would be also interesting, just for me, to see how go back then and see how some people, maybe they wrote about it in newspapers and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of my research had like, it wasn't directly like them like experiencing it, but it was like their grandparents were having like that kind of experience, or like they like a lot of like their like family were in like the units.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting.
The fact that they just brought them, and then they brought them back over there. This is just crazy.
It would, yeah. And like the amount of like that must be like so traumatizing.
Exactly.
You know, like
especially for little kids too. Anyway, good.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.